Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started here at the Fabricator Stage. We're going to get started here at the Fabricator Stage for our last session and last presentation of the day. It's Showstoppers and Unique Applications with Jeffrey Hutchins. Appreciate it. You coming and invite you all down. Showstoppers, what did I just say? Showstoppers and Unique Applications with Jeffrey Hutchins. I'd like to turn the time over to Jeffrey, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, thank you. So thanks everyone for joining this session. So I'm going to talk about something a little different than tile and stone. And in my mind, it's tile, stone, and then solid surface. Not a lot of solid surface companies here. I'm from DuPont. We make Corian, which is almost like the Kleenex version of solid surface. It's been around since the late 60s. Solid surface is basically, the simplest terms, it's like filled clear acrylic sheet. So some of the topics I'm going to talk about today are like really unique applications that you can do with solid surface, including engraving, dye sublimation basics and how to lay out prints, designing for deconstruction, and thermoforming and dye sublimation together using solid surface. And then we'll have a little bit for questions and answers at the end. So I'm a technical service engineer with Corian, which is the parent company of DuPont, and I came from the aerospace industry there for years, so I'm an industrial designer and a machinist by trade, and I came to DuPont about 6 years ago, and I really fell in love with solid surface materials. I do quartz fabrication and porcelain fabrication once in a while, but solid surface is almost in its own category. And I'm really partial to it. It's very versatile. I'm a do-it-yourselfer. It works perfect for those types of applications. So one of the primary things you can do with solid surface materials, and including Corian, there's lots of other companies out there making similar type materials, and it works with most of them. One of the basic things, the first thing that I think about is engraving. And what's great about solid surface is there's no crystalline silica, so you don't have to deal with cutting it wet. You can cut it on dry machinery with dust collection. You don't have to worry about inhaling those nasty silica particles. So here's some examples on the screen up here. On the left there, that's just an intricate wall that's been cut out. And you can play a lot of different ways with lights and shadows. Backlights really well. That picture of the wagon up there, that's actually from our facility, our factory in Buffalo, New York. It's where I'm out of. I work in the research and development department, but that's actually a lithophane. So that's about 50 inches wide and 30 inches tall. And you essentially take an image and convert it to grayscale, and then you put that into the CNC software, and you can run the tooling back and forth, and it basically takes all the light colors and makes it a thinner surface. So you're cutting out the material, either leaving stuff on, that would be the dark areas, or thinning it out, which would be the light areas. And it works really well because you can backlight it. And that DuPont logo in the bottom right there is a backlit and relieved. So there's different depths, and it's backlit with a light, so the light shines through and it has that wave effect along with the lighting. So there's a lot of things you can do in the engraving aspect of it. And so that's kind of the basic of what a lot of people do. And it's not just a countertop material. That's what a lot of people might think of it as, but it's very versatile in a lot of other applications, which I'm going to show in a second. So one of the different applications we've been playing around with recently is called dye sublimation. And the very basics of it is that you print a special ink onto a special paper and put the Corian on top and heat it slowly, and that ink absorbs into the surface of the Corian solid surface. Here's some examples here. In the upper right, that's a wall with a floral pattern, dye sublimated on there, and you can do a lot of different things with this. You have to pay attention to the seams. You can't seam it together because you won't be able to sand the dye sublimated ink. It'll sand off. So you would have to have small gaps in a seam in a wall application like that In the bottom right, there's just a panel, and it almost acts like a canvas, and it becomes really sharp, and it holds up outside. In the bottom left there, that's a cornhole board we made, just playing around with this. So you can thermoform it after it's been dye sublimated and pretty much put whatever images you want on it. And I'll show a video, a bunch of different videos, but that's one of the videos. I'll show you essentially how we made that. So one of the interesting parts and the hard parts, not necessarily too difficult, but it's the layout for dye sublimation. This is probably the most difficult part of it. If you want to make a bunch of different parts, like those are buffalo cutting boards, is the layout. And a lot of people, the fabrication techniques are very similar to stone fabrication, where you have an origin point, a similar type of CNC machine. This one's just dry with a rotating cutter. So you have an origin point, and you can lay out the ink and where you want it printed, and then cut it out afterwards. So these are the machines that we have. We have an Elcom multi-therm. So there's a heated platen oven at the bottom that slides out. There's the top part, that's the dye sublimation part. And I'll show videos of all this in a minute. And then you have the printer there. And in the industry now, this isn't like commonplace, but I hope it becomes commonplace. Not a lot of fabricators have the printer and the CNC and the dye sublimation table. Well, you could potentially buy one of the printers and create a whole business just around providing prints for these types of applications for different fabricators. Make a interesting side business. So I'm going to show a video now of like printing those parts that I just showed, and I'm going to explain like the boundary box and whatnot. Example of our dye sublimation printer, and right now it's printing a file that has been laid out in image software. And the way we are laying out this example is with the intention to cut it out on the CNC afterwards. So there's a boundary box around the images, and that boundary box will help us align the corian onto the paper. So by doing that, you get an accurate origin point that you can then put on the CNC and cut out the shapes that you need to. These are the alignment marks. So I have a boundary box. I've cut the corian to the size of the boundary box. So let me show you, let me reveal it. And I'm going to go put this on the CNC. So this is our origin point where we program the CNC from. So there's our buffaloes. So let's go put it on the CNC now. So this is those alignment marks that you just saw. This is our origin point. So we're going to lay this corner onto our work offset over here. So let me put up our alignment post. And I'm going to just square this up. So this is that same point. Just helps with alignment. One other thing is that I've oversized this picture. Just in case there's some slight, you can see it's off the edge slightly. That's going to be fine because it's going to cut it out inside of this picture. The picture's about 1/4 of an inch oversized, so there's a little bit of leeway for the alignment. Okay, now I'm going to cut that out. So now it's mostly cut out. I leave a little bit of material still in there, and I'll just hit it out like that, and then I'll take it onto a small table router and clean up the edges. So this is just an easy way of doing multiple parts, so you don't have to do individual ones and then set them on the paper. just an easy way to automate it. All right, so once we started die sublimating and doing things like that, it made my life a lot easier. I have to make a lot of like awards or trinkets or stuff like that and giveaways. And to make something like that, you would have to machine it out, fill it in, or paint it, and then sand it afterwards. So this type of technology is a lot more efficient. You could make a whole business just on making small trinkets and cutting boards and whatnot, I think. So now I'm going to show like an alternative die sublimation method using just a small t-shirt press. Dig this out and show you all something that's probably more available than a large thermoforming table, a large expensive thermoforming table. So this is just an old t-shirt press that we found. We dug it out, and one of the things we do in research and development is just do different techniques with Corian, and we thought it might work well for die sublimating on the Corian in a small scale thing. And so this is just a scrap glacier white material. Either it was off spec or they didn't need it to regrind it and put it into our material again, which we normally do. If we have extra material, we'll grind it up and it'll be the particulates in other colors. So we just got a bunch of this material, and that's the same scrap material that we used for the cornhole board. So in the past, if you were going to make a design on a type of surface like this, like a shape that was decorative, you'd have to machine in text or whatnot and then fill it in with either epoxy or seam adhesive or paint and then sand it off again. Well, the great thing about die sublimation is that you don't need to do any of that. So I have our die sublimation print in this t-shirt press, and I already have everything set. So it's at a set point of 170 degrees Celsius. It's cool right now. I have the paper down. I'm going to put our blank down on the paper, just kind of eye it up. And then I'm just going to close this. And the way this works is heat and pressure, the same as with the large one that you just saw. It works the same way with the small t-shirt press like this. There's heat and there's pressure. This adjusts the pressure. So I already have the heat set. So I'm going to turn it on, and I'm going to let it get up to temperature and hold it there for a few minutes, and then I'm going to let it cool down. All right, so this should be around low enough temperature where I can show you. So I'm opening this up. All right. Still hot, so I'm having my heat gloves on. Let's see how this came out. Look at that. So nice, easy way to do this with a small portable t-shirt press. All right, just wanted to mention this does work on quartz also. I can confirm that. Light colors, you can't die sublimate white, so you do need a light background. It'll work on a light gray also. All right, the next topic that's kind of out of the box is designing for deconstruction and using solid surface. Solid surface turns out to be a great material for this type of application. And I had found this book like a year or two ago, and it was really cool teaching you how to make CNC designed furniture, so using a 3-axis CNC machine, just all 2D geometry, line geometry, and you can cut these different shapes and make chairs and tables and whatnot. And in the whole book, I noticed they were using like plywood or thin wood like Luan and stuff. And I said, well, Corian should work great with that, and it does. It turns out it works well outside. It looks a lot nicer than the normal materials that people are doing this with. And the basics of this type of designing, and also in theory, you could do this on quartz or tile type materials also. If it's through body, it would work a lot better. Corian is through body, so it works really well. So you can see here, these are the basics. That picture on the top is why a normal cut would not go together well. You can see there's not radius, there's radiuses on the bottom of that cutout. so it will not fit together flush. You can see the top picture on the left is showing that cut with the radiuses in there, and the picture on the right is showing it how when you put those two pieces together, it'll stand proud. Well, this design technique, you put basically a dog bone type fillet in there. So when you put those pieces together, they sit flush, and the top of those pieces are now flush and level. So that's the basics of this. Then I'm going to show some other design techniques also. So there's like the overlap, the edge to edge, and these are all essentially cut with 2D geometry. That's the great part about it. Super easy to lay out, super easy to design. Just when you're cutting these pieces, it's laying flat on the CNC. The through at the bottom there, we use that to make a bunch of different tables. And some of these tables we gave to culinary schools locally around Buffalo, and they love this type of stuff. Corian cleans really well. It works outside, it holds up, and when you pair it with the dye sublimation, you can get other really cool aesthetics. So I'm going to play a video right now. Oh, actually, it's a 3D model. This is actually a cornhole board that we made. Cornhole boards just seem to be a thing that everyone at the plant likes to play around with, and it's a good thing to try and challenge yourself to design. Free R&D conference room, and I just want to show some examples of some of the things that we talked about. And this is an example of designing for deconstruction and dye sublimation. So the top of this table, it's dye sublimated. So we made a few of these for a local brewery just to test out and see how it held up outside. They really liked it. The top of this is dye sublimated with a design pattern and their logo, and we also dye sublimated in some QR codes. So when you scan it with your phone, it'll take you to their menu. So when you have the QR code dye sublimated into the Corian itself, you don't have to deal with dirty menus, and it's easy to clean. And we kind of thought outside of the box when designing this. We have this top piece. So there's only 4 pieces in this whole table. You have this top piece, which is intended to be a glass holder, like a wine glass or a like little beer flights. So you take this off, and using the designing for deconstruction techniques, it works really well. Just sits on top of there. We also made another one without this plug in the top, so you could potentially set a pizza pan or whatnot. Just getting crazy with this designing. So I'm going to take this apart. So that first piece was the glass holder. The second piece is the top. And all these edges are eased, so I'm not wearing gloves right now. But see how easy that comes apart? And I cut out a number of holes in this design just for like wind flow, so it doesn't blow over while it's outside. Purse holders. Possibilities are really endless when you're designing with the idea of deconstructing in mind. Let's put this back together. And I'll show you some other examples. Also, some cool things that you can do with Corian that a lot of people might not know about. So over here, this is just a pedestal with some embedded cell phone chargers. So this is wireless charging. Corian works really well as to not get in the way of different frequencies. And one of those is the wireless charging. So in the top here, I cut in grooves with a spherical end mill, so it has a nice area that you can clean. You could also dye sub the locations of where your phone needs to go. That would work too. This screen right here, this is a nice example of how Corian can be used for like a conference room screen. Works really well with different types of projectors. This, we just took 2 pieces of 1/4-inch material and we seamed it together. So there's a seam in the middle there. And we sanded it to a matte finish. You could also, if it turns out, a piece of our wide sheet Corian, it's really good dimensions for a 4:3 aspect ratio. This is made to a 16:9, maybe 16:10. Hung on the wall with French cleats, so super simple, and I'll show some examples of how we hung that to the wall. These down here, these are examples of dye sublimation. We just took some artwork, dye sublimated it on there, and then on the backs of these, we have some audio exciters and a Bluetooth transmitter. So you can hook your phone up to this, and the audio exciters essentially shake the corian and make audio from vibrating the piece of it. And then I have these on another idea for designing for deconstruction, these small easels. Works really well. When you keep in mind that you want to design things that are easily taken apart, it helps out a lot as far as storage, as far as fabrication. Super easy. As long as you have a CNC machine or even a pattern, you can potentially do it by hand. So just one more example of a cool dye sublimation thing. So this is just a piece of corian, and it's rebated in the back. So now this, where the picture is, it's about 1/8 of an inch thick. And I even dye sublimated this image of a frame around it, so it looks like a framed piece of artwork, and then I put an LED panel behind it so you can backlight it. So super easy to do, and it's a lot easier nowadays with the thin LED panels that are available, so the possibilities are endless. All right, so I just want to mention, the great thing about like designing for deconstruction is that there's no adhesive, you don't need silicone, there's no hardware. One of the things that we were looking at is like, how do you recycle corian? Because we will take sometimes scrap material and we'll grind it up and put it back into the product so it's recycled. Well, a lot of companies don't want to deal with that, like because you have to take off the silicone, take out the mounting hardware. With methods like that, you don't have to deal with it, and it makes it a lot easier and more sustainable to recycle. So next I'm going to talk about like thermal forming, and I'm going to show an example of thermal forming a cornhole board. That other cornhole board design you saw was like designed for deconstruction. This one we're going to bend the piece of corian. You'll see how flexible it is. So the way I make like molds for thermal forming, and thermal forming really isn't a thing in tile and stone. You can do it with quartz, and it involves like boiling water, and you need really large radiuses, like feet. You have limitations with corian, but it's inches. So for 1/2 inch material, it's a 3-inch inside radius. That's the minimum. So keeping all this in mind, the way I like to make the molds is I use primarily MDF. And you can see there, that's the mold negative for the back radius. And it's 28 pieces of MDF, and that's the design layout. I just cut it out on the CNC and put dowels in there and wood glue. And that frame there, that's the frame for the mold. And again, designed for deconstruction type techniques where those slats are holding it together, and there's some nails in there and whatnot. But so I'll show you that in a minute. So here's a video of basically how we did it, and it just shows the versatility of the solid surface. Sublimation print on top of the thermal forming table. This is a dye sub top. So essentially what happens is that you pull vacuum with the silicone top, and it holds it down, and it heats it up the bottom slowly, and the ink absorbs into the face of the corian. So let's put this into place. And you can see here we rebated where the radius is going to be. We cut this out on the CNC machine. And I radiused all the edges just so we don't pop the table. It's pretty resistant, but just want to be safe. We're just going to try and center it. We've oversized this. This type of table, it has a vacuum groove around the outside, so you need these thin pieces of corian. Put them right against the edge, and that helps the vacuum get funneled up there when we pull it down. All right. So let me close this. I'm going to close this, and then I'm going to just go over and turn on the vacuum, and then turn on the heating element. And there's a pre-programmed timer, heats it up slowly to 180 C, and then holds it there for 5 minutes, and then cools it down slowly to 60 C. And then you'll see it's a nice print on the Corian itself. So it's sucked down nicely. I sometimes, in some cases, if it's sharp text, I'll put weight on top. I don't think we need it for this one. So it's been about 2 hours. I just turned off the vacuum table. I'm going to unlock this, lift up the top, and just see how it came out. There's a lot of static electricity with this type of setup. That's why the paper I put on top is sticking up there. All right, let's see what we got. All right, so it looks like we had pretty good success. The next step, we're going to put it in the oven and try and bend it around the mold. All right, so we just dye sublimated our cornhole blank, and next we're going to heat it and thermoform it onto this mold. So this mold, it's made mostly with MDF, and I have a positive piece here and 2 negative pieces for the radii. Half-inch material, which is what we're using, is normally a minimum of a 3-inch radius that you can bend it around. We're actually going to go slightly tighter than that, and to make it easier, we've rebated the backside of this where the radiuses are going to be. So after we have it put in the platen oven, this thing here, it's an oven. It's heated on the top and the bottom. And we're going to take that, put it on there, and keep it in there for 1 minute per millimeter. So this is 12 millimeter material, approximately around 12 minutes from now. We're going to take it out of there, wedge it in the front and back of this mold, and put on the mold negatives to hold the corners, to hold the radiuses in place. And then we're going to let it cool. And then hopefully everything works well, and we'll be able to take it out and use it to play cornhole. All right, so let's get to it. Let's put this on there. And safety first, these are heat-resistant gloves. We're wearing eye protection. This is heated at 170 C, which is approximately 340 Fahrenheit. And in this case, we're going to put the dye sublimated portion up, and we're going to put spacers in here so it doesn't actually touch the face of it. All right, so this is our mold. It's mostly made with MDF. The face of it's made with what's called wacky wood. It's basically MDF with slots cut in the back. You can see here. And it just helps it bend around. I couldn't, with this material, get it to a tight enough radius that we need. So I put these metal pipes in here. And you could make these molds out of like Ren board if you had a CNC machine. We didn't need a lot of use out of this. You can also 3D print molds nowadays. There's some companies that 3D print with sand, very heat resistant, would work really well. They are expensive. This is a nice, cheap way of doing it. And I can share the files with anyone if you want to reach out to me. The mold negative portions, this is made with medium density fiberboard. So there's like 28 of these stacked together. And I put wood glue in between and put these wooden dowels. So I had these dowels standing up, and I hammered and put glue in the middle of all these pieces. So it makes a really nice, strong form that's heat resistant. In the front of this, I did a similar thing. I didn't use as much MDF. I just used the wacky wood, kind of bent it in here. I cut out these blanks on the CNC machine to match the radius there, just slightly offset for the Corian. All right, so now our sheet is up to temperature. We used an IR thermometer and checked. It was a little low, so we put it in for a couple more minutes. Normally, the lower the better if you're doing a large radius. You could do it around 150 C or so. And the higher you have the heat, the more chances that a white color might yellow. In this case, it doesn't matter, and we want maximum flexibility. So it should be right about now. We have everything set up ahead of time. We got our clamps ready, our mold negatives ready. So we're just going to wedge the pieces in the front grooves and the back grooves, and then put on the pieces. So let's get to it. Yeah, see how flexible that is? You got it in. Close this. All right. Good. Hold on. You might want to slide it that way, the mold a little. This way? Yeah, there you go. And you do have to kind of work pretty quick because it will cool off. All right. And I'm not clamping too tight back here. I don't want too much distortion in the back. I was just going right like that. Okay. All right. So you see this worked out pretty well. It's still extremely hot, so we're going to put hot signs on here. Just so if anyone comes into this room while it's cooling off, it'll probably take about 15 minutes to cool off. We just want to identify that this is hot. And as always, we're wearing heat-resistant gloves, long sleeves. You could potentially, when you're putting one of these molds on, burn your arm if you have your sleeves rolled up or something. So it looks like that worked out pretty well. And the great thing about a cornhole mold is that this is going to hold up outside. And the dye sublimation holds up real well also under UV light. So perfect material for outdoor applications. All right, it's about 40 centigrade, so it's ready to take off. Just undo this. All right, yeah, let's put it up here. Yeah, so it's what we intended. All right, I hope that was informative. So one more video. A few examples of like dye sublimation and thermal forming together. This is just like an Eagle American flag thing we gave out to all our veterans for Veterans Day, along with this designed for deconstruction little stand. Uses the same technique as this table, the other table we looked at. You could even use it for a cell phone holder. Just quick, easy, like trinkets that you can make. This is made with 1/4-inch material. And a lot of this material is like from off-spec material. And we're a zero landfill site, so anything that's off-spec, a lot of the stuff that wasn't sold, we'll grind up and put into road beds. So very like sustainable story and everything. This is another type of mold that you can make for thermal forming. So essentially it's just 4 pieces of MDF stacked together with this profile in there. And I'm heating up some corian. And basically you just wedge it in there and then let it cool, and then you can tap it out and you get get this type of thing. I haven't sanded this or cleaned it up. This just came out of there, but I'll show you how it works to go in there. So let's put on my gloves, and there should be a piece heated up, and I'll show you just wedging it in there. You see how flexible the corian becomes. I'm just going to get it in here. Look at that. It's kind of fun working with heated corian. There you go. And then in a few minutes, that'll be cool, and I can tap it out. So a bunch of neat little things you can do. All right, so these are all just like advanced techniques, thinking outside of the box of different ways of using solid surface material. Again, there's lots of brands. I know this works well for corian solid surface. I can't verify any other solid surface. A lot of these techniques might work for quartz and tile. Like you could implement designing for deconstruction into that type of stuff. Cut it with a water jet instead of a dry CNC. So I'm here for any questions that anyone might have.
Custom color. We get a lot of requests for custom colors. Have you ever dye sublimated a custom color?
Yeah, so it depends on what application you're doing. With the dye sublimation, you can't sand it too much because it'll come off. So when you dye sublimate it, it'll go into the material about 20 thousandths of an inch. So you are limited as to your application. Like if you're going to put it on a wall, you can't have hard seams unless you offset the image and sand in between the images and seam in between them. We haven't got any requests for that, but it could be in the future. Lots of fabricators could buy the material and dye sublimate it themselves, so that's always an option. There are fabricators out there that are doing it. Rick Wing in New Jersey, I think he's one of them. I think he's in New Jersey. He has a company, Surface Lab. He does a lot of wall printing and dye sublimation. Yep, Futris. Yep. So, yeah, thank you.
I have a quick question. How durable is that dye supplementing? Like, can you do it for a table, like a restaurant table, and put advertisements in it, or and eat on it? Is that?
Yes, there's a table over there at the ISPA booth if you want to look at it after this. But yeah, it holds up really well. From my experience, you can put the QR codes in. And the text and images become really sharp. And it holds up outside too. So just a different way of doing, corian's been around for a long time. So just thinking outside of the box from your normal horizontal application.
Cool. Any other questions for Jeffrey?
All right, thank you.
Let's give Jeffrey a round of applause. Thank you very much. That concludes our Fabricator Stage for the show, and it's been a great week. We'd like to encourage you to visit our Natural Stone Institute booth, the Rockhead booth, and ISFA booth. Great booths and great information. Appreciate it, and have a great show.